And today we have on the show Mr. Graham Furnis. So Graham is fully immersed and passionate in providing ITSM solutions. He is a business-driven IT professional with over 20 years of technology and management experience. Graham's certified as an ITIL manager and expert, and he is an accredited ITIL instructor. So welcome to the show, Graham, and thank you for joining us.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, Christy. And welcome everyone again to a Thought Rock lunch presentation. Our presentation today, I hope you get some good little pointers out of this one, is a little technique that I've used many times just to try and come up with an easy way of doing some process improvement and getting buy-in at the same time. And I'll kind of go through sort of the basic methods that I sort of promote with this. And so it's our process improvement, or it could be a service improvement, anything you want to do around improvement, through pain point analysis and coming up with quick wins. And as you'll see from our screen here, I'll go into my highlight mode. We also have a workshop which gives a bit more detail in working through some of the more mechanics. And this is kind of a summary of that workshop that we offer. So let's start off and just sort of getting an outline of what I'm going to cover today, and then we'll get into the details and see how everyone likes the idea of a pain point analysis. And sometimes it's called pain value analysis, so really they're the same thing. So our basic agenda, we're just going to start off today, and I always like to go over just some of the common terms and definitions to make sure we're all on the same page and speaking the same language. A very ITIL-like thing to do. And then we get into our pain point analysis. And as you can see here, I've kind of broken it up into two distinct groups. So the first thing we want to deal with is identifying our pains and trying to rationalize what we've identified. So I'll provide some background and some examples around that. And then once we have our pains identified, then we can start worrying about the problem-solving aspect in our second step down here. And again, start rationalizing those problem solutions. And a key thing for those who have been immersed in ITIL and you're familiar with the ITIL concepts, we want to keep on coming up not just with any solution, but we want to kind of drill down to find the quick wins. Something that's just generally a good project management thing to do. Find those things which demonstrate progression and success early on, and it maintains momentum in everything we're doing. So we'll run through that. It'll take about half an hour to go through. We'll keep to our time schedule, and then we can summarize at the end and drop into some questions that anyone may have. And of course, if you have questions along the way, feel free to put them into the chat window, and then we'll deal with them as well as they come up. So let's start off. At the beginning here, let's go into the overview slide and just make sure we've got some of the common terms down here. Well, that's not my next slide. Here it is. Okay, so what is a pain point analysis? Some of the important pieces that come out. The first thing I'd like to sort of highlight here, it's an informal technique. So there's any number of ways that I've done this in the past, and that anyone can actually go ahead and do this. But the basics are the same. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to assemble the key stakeholders, and whatever you're trying to improve, you're trying to improve something because something isn't working correct currently. And that's what our pain points are all about. If no one is complaining or we don't think anything is going wrong, a pain point analysis is not the technique to use. So we want to use this one when we know that we have some things going wrong, and we need to figure out what exactly is going wrong from end to end of we'll stay with the process concept, so end to end of the process concept. And we want to get those stakeholders who can tell us which parts of that process are causing them pain. So they're looking for any type of issues of concern, maybe barriers to prevent them from achieving either a business objective or just day-to-day operational efficiencies. And it's key to remember that we're involving people and we want their input, their perspectives. So around this whole concept, these stakeholders are forming the focus group, and you notice here in the sort of subpoints, they're going to brainstorm for pain points, they're going to brainstorm again for problem solutions, and then drill that down to the last step we saw on the agenda of going into some quick win initiatives. And just around the last pieces here, you notice I've highlighted the brainstorming concept. So it's key here to get people thinking and freely speaking and coming up with what they think is causing them pain. So it requires, again, a good combination of people. You know, when you're thinking about these stakeholders, you want to make sure that they're from across the process end of what you're doing. You want to keep them focused as well on the scope of what they're going to brainstorm about. Whenever you have anyone who's tried a brainstorming session, you know that these things can quickly go out of hand. And so you want to make sure you define what exactly it is you're trying to improve. Is it just that our process isn't achieving its key metrics and objectives? Is there a problem with the efficiency of a process? Maybe there's a cost factor. Maybe there's a lack of coordination with other areas. You want to keep it focused. One thing I found with the pain point analysis is that if you don't really define what it is you're trying to look for, there can be many pains out there, and quickly it grows out of control. So, so just around this last little concept here, keep people focused on specific things and types of pains that you're looking for.
Graham, just a quick question. Is the pain point, like what process is a part of? Would you say it's part of the problem management process, or where does that all fit in?
Well, it's a good question. It's a pain point analysis is a technique specifically around or within the continual improvement life cycle of the ITIL framework. So it applies to every process. Every process should be going through, and especially if it's not working and you've got pains, every process is going to benefit from doing a pain point analysis. And it's a common way of coming up with, you know, what are the key things that people on the line or involved in the process or even a service are noticing isn't working. It's also, as your point came out, you know, it's closely related to problem management as well, because in problem management, it's two sides to problem management. On the process side, we have a problem process, and we have to constantly try and improve and find flaws and things. And then we're also trying to problem solve technical bugs and so on. So a pain point analysis is very much embedded within the concepts of problem management. The whole concept of brainstorming, especially when you're trying to figure out what isn't working and what are the priorities of what to fix, is very much a concept in problem management. So there's a very close link there, and it's a technique used within problem management for both process improvement and service improvement, but it's not specifically just a technique for problem management. It benefits as being all process areas, and it benefits the problem activity as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Graham.
Okay. So, so I think everyone's got the idea that our pain point analysis, we're looking for something that's not working, only appropriate when things aren't working, and it goes throughout the service life cycle. So the other quick, or the other concept I want to make sure we're familiar with, not everyone may be familiar with this whole idea here of a quick win. So the basic definition of a quick win, some of the keywords here, it's early success in some type of series or program of improvement. So quite early on within ITIL and the whole improvement concepts, it's recognized that, you know, if improvements aren't going to be seen for months or years, there might be people questioning the initiative from the very beginning. So a quick win is always a great thing to do. It keeps momentum going. You get valuable lessons by sort of adopting the concepts of a quick win. And it ties into the concept, too, just to link it back to some ITIL, of the Deming short improvement cycles of plan, do, check, act. And the advantage is you can learn from things as you go, because quite often in a large program of improvements, the bigger the steps you try and take, the more things change around you, and they become a bit more irrelevant as time goes on. And The other two here, these are the other key things which I like about a pain point analysis. Because you're involving stakeholders and you're trying to drill improvements down to quick win solutions, those stakeholders are key people who can make or break your improvement success. So when we start to break things down and we come up with quick win solutions from our pain point analysis, it's going to build confidence amongst those stakeholders. And those stakeholders as well will help to make sure things succeed because they're committed. They are the ones involved in the stakeholder analysis, and it's their ideas and inputs that identified the pains and the solutions. So when we break things down, they're going to be committed to these solutions because it comes from them. They'll help to drive things forward rather than having a decision forced upon them. And again, trying to find these quick wins will give them confidence because it'll show early success as much as possible. So that's really it from the terms point of view. Again, the key thing here is that for all improvement initiatives, you want to drive things down to a quick win wherever you can because you really need to show success as we start moving forward. So from our agenda, let's get into an example of going through a pain point. Step 1, pain point identification. Okay. And so the first thing we need to do, as I mentioned, we're going to have stakeholders. You need to assemble your stakeholders, make sure they have something to say. So get people who want to participate and really want to try and improve things that are going on. And especially when you may have technical teams or other types of groups, you want to put people into teams because around the concept of brainstorming, you tend to be much more creative when you're brainstorming around the team's concept. So we assemble our teams here, and then the next little point we have down here, provide visuals wherever possible. So here we go. I've got somewhere here I have a visual showing up. There it is. So if we're doing some type of process improvement, here's the advantage of having a process flow diagram. You want to put it at the high level. If you're really going into a detailed pain point analysis, we can break it down to many of the sub-levels. Here's just a very quick and simple process flow for a request fulfillment process. So in the little example we're going through today, we'll use this as our sort of visual to help us run through a pain point analysis. We provide the same thing to our stakeholders, and then they can go through and start brainstorming. So what they'd end up doing then, I'll start from the bottom here. So as you're brainstorming in these teams, you want to make sure they've got a good example of what they're trying to do. So you want to maybe start them off and lead them through some examples. And where I've been involved most often is here as the neutral facilitator. So you get everyone comfortable, you get them used to the idea about how they're going to brainstorm. And over here you'll see I've kind of put up here some post-it notes. Everyone's got a preferred technique in the way you like to brainstorm. Some people might just want to brainstorm on a notepad that each team has. Could be whiteboards, could be flip charts, whatever works. There's no one technique that I found is better than the other. Get to know your stakeholders, and they'll suggest what's good for them to just start jotting down ideas. But what I do find works over time is that when you start to document these pains, you want to assign some type of scribe within the teams and let them choose it themselves. Someone will jot down the ideas, or you might just give everyone a post-it pad and say, jot your ideas down and post them on the process flow chart where you think this affects you and is causing you pain. So in the brainstorming, you want to let this, again, sort of feed itself and let people just come up with their ideas and capture as much information as you possibly can.
Graham, I just have a quick question about assembling stakeholders. Do you have any advice on where to select stakeholders for the pain point analysis?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's a good question. So with the stakeholders that you're going to form multiple teams around this whole process over here on the side. Definitely I'll put it here in sort of a little acronym, and we'll see it later on in the example. So choose someone from the business end. Unless you have truly a process that doesn't affect the business, most processes in some way roll up to that business. And think about an end-to-end service. So then you have your, well, the example we're going to cover today. Service desk is involved in requests, and then you have your support levels. They're going to be involved in all these different requests. So you want to think about your stakeholders. Definitely go across the end-to-end roles that you've defined within your process. And I find it really key, though, understand and involve the business. It's one of the key things that ITIL's been promoting and pushing for with their version 3 when it first came out, and then the latest ITIL 2011 refresh. The more that IT starts talking and discussing and involving the business, the more we're going to have success with our overall service management initiative. So very good question. You want to make sure that wherever possible you try and involve the business, and you try and involve all people across the organization that are involved in the process. So at the end of step 1 then, this is our brainstorming activity. So we've given the instructions. It's a very simple technique. You want to distribute the process flow and the rules of the road. So here's the pains we're trying to identify. Don't go out beyond the scope of what we're trying to improve. Let people put all their ideas onto a Post-it note or a whiteboard, whatever works for them, and just let everything come out. So don't worry about saying this is a bad idea or an irrelevant pain at this point. That's what our next step is for. So if I go to my next screen here, so this is now pain point rationalization. And if I'm painting a picture of a bit of a timing where I've seen this, when I've done this before, it might be just an hour to sort of brainstorm some of the initial pains. It doesn't take too long. Once people get going, it takes usually probably about 15 minutes for people to warm up to the idea and just kind of get an idea about how to document things down. But especially where things aren't working, people eventually will get the hang of it, and they just start coming up with all sorts of identifications about different pieces that aren't working. So then you take a break and you come back, and now we're into step 2. So at this point, again, we're still going to let the teams focus as a team, and they're going to consolidate their pain points into a list. And what I've always asked people to do when I've done these things is put it into an electronic list. You could just simply write it down on a piece of paper and neaten it up. I like things on a spreadsheet because with spreadsheets, I can be given those and I can form them into a master copy. So whichever way you do it, you still have to consolidate everything. You may have mentioned the same pain 2 or 3 different times, but different ways. So you want to try and eliminate these duplicate pains, and then you want to try and come up with your top 10 pains. Because again, some people might have 20 or 30. It might be too much to deal with. You still want to capture it, but you want to at least know what the top levels are. So this relates to the next piece here. These teams will also discuss then what do they think are the most important pains. And here's where it's important to go back to the beginning. So what is it I gave the instructions for the pain point analysis about what kind of pains we're trying to brainstorm for? This will also help us figure out then how do we prioritize them. All sorts of different reasons for doing a pain point analysis. Again, you might be trying to improve business objectives or key metrics. Maybe there's some type of business impact happening, and those are the rules about what are the pains that are affecting this business impact. Maybe there's customer dissatisfaction, efficiency or effectiveness deficiencies, whatever it might be. This is the whole purpose you've done the pain point analysis for. So you want to make sure that you give people the guidelines and they understand it, and they take the first crack at trying to figure out the priority of these pain points. That'll help them choose their top 10 pains up above. And again, that might take another half hour to an hour type of discussion. So once we've got these pain points kind of rationalized and summarized, then we can go on to the example here where, I'd like my teams to, let's say in the example here we have a service desk team, whoops, let me go back up a slide. Here we go. So I like to make sure that the team puts everything into a spreadsheet. My preferred way of doing things. And the stakeholder over here, it's got a little acronym. So here's my service desk example. They've gone through and they've identified these different panes down here and given it an ID number. And then they've gone through and given it a ranking. In this example I'm using, something which has the highest pane is given a 10, and then it goes down to the lowest. So in this example, we can see here that might be hard to see on your screen, but there's a lot of frustration in knowing which functional areas to assign requests for, because nothing has been laid out ahead of time. The service desk is left to figure it out every time a call comes in. So something which, if you've been in this area, especially in request fulfillment, you know that definitely causes pain for everyone involved in the process. So if every team does this, we can start combining all of these lists. And that's what my next slide goes towards. So we have our spreadsheets submitted. If you're the one facilitating the pain point analysis, you're going to combine and consolidate them. So again, we're going to use our teams involved to help us do this. So starting off at the beginning here, so we combine our pain point lists. And the way I like to do a pain point analysis, each team, while you have them in the room together, they're going to present their pain points and their priorities to the rest of the people involved. So everyone in the focus group or the brainstorming session, they all get to hear about what the different teams have come up with and how they've prioritized their frustrations. So as you're doing that, you're going to give instructions. If you've noticed something sounds the same as a pain that you've identified, let's make comments and note it right away. And maybe there's two different ways people have prioritized things. If it's important for one group but not for another group, well, take the highest priority, because overall it's important to someone in the overall process flow. So once we do all of these things, we'll produce a consolidated and agreed upon pain point list. And again, what I'm trying to do with these pain point analysis sessions is that by getting everyone to participate and not have all these decisions made for people, they start to understand the background about what's important to the organization and what really is a pain of a proper priority compared to everyone else. And you get people talking, look, quite often you get functional teams that don't normally talk to each other. So by having this consolidation activity, by having people telling other teams what's going on, you really start to build a tighter organization. You start to understand cross-dependencies, and you get a better view. And ITIL is all about trying to understand how each functional team within a process relies upon one another to give good end result service delivery. So at the end of things, we end up with our consolidated list and our consolidated rankings, and again, being in a spreadsheet format, so I can manage things, I always put in a pain identifier here. So again, it's ranked from highest number is the most important to 0 would be the least important. And you notice here, there's no surprise about this. The things that would tend to be ranked high are those that go across multiple roles or stakeholders to a process or a service, whatever it is you might be trying to do a pain point analysis for. And of course, now you have a lot of good buy-in, because you realize multiple teams are affected by different issues. So this is basically what we do in the first aspect of a pain point analysis. It's very much a creative brainstorming session to come up and identify what the pains are that are out there, rationalize them, and then come up with this list saying, these are the ones that matter the most. We've all discussed and agreed upon it, and now we need to take a break. And what I suggest is that on a different day, you'd come back and do the problem solving. Or sometimes I've done it as well where people just push through and do it in one day. But typically, if people sit and think about it, they come up with better solutions. So the next step we move into then. So we've got our pain points, they're consolidated. We know what it is that our stakeholders have identified that need to be addressed. So now we go to step 3, which is the problem solving. And again, could do it the same day or could do it on a different day. I prefer doing things on a separate day to let it sink in. But everyone's going to have their own preferred way of doing things, and you have time pressures that you have to work within. So this next piece goes a little bit quicker because really it's just a repeat of the pain point analysis. The problem solving is basically the same thing, but now we're trying to brainstorm for problem solutions. So again, the basic steps to run through. Make sure everyone has a list of the consolidated and prioritized pain points. And I think I'm missing something on my slide. There we go. I'm missing the process flow. So again, assemble your stakeholder teams again.
And Graham, are these, sorry to interrupt, are these the same stakeholders as the ones that are identifying the pain points?
Yes, they are. It's going to be the same stakeholders you had from the pain point analysis because, again, what you're trying to do is get people to buy in to what we think is important that needs to be addressed and also what's important for the solutions. But it's a good question because what I might do this time, I might mix the teams up based upon the consolidated or whatever the summarized pain points I had before. So if I just go back to my previous slide, here it is. So, I've noticed here that there's some issues, if I just kind of circle them or highlight them. So there's some issues here just affecting the service desk. And there's other issues that are affecting, multiple groups. Now in the example, it's more of a learning example. You don't always get this nice clean delineation of things. But what I might do is now I'll reform the teams. Instead of having a separate team for the business stakeholders and the service desk and level 2 support stakeholders, I might make cross-functional teams where I take a couple of people from each of the business stakeholders, level 2, and service desk, and I get them working together so that I'm really trying to bridge gaps within the organization and build good, not just teamwork within teams, but teamwork across teams. So, coming back to here, I'm going to focus on my cross-functional teams, thinking about, well, where do I really want to make sure that people are working well together because I've identified pains which are common across more than one team. So the same things that I mentioned with the brainstorming for the pain point analysis, neutral facilitator helps. You want to brainstorm for solutions and, again, assign a scribe, just like you did before. Let the thoughts flow freely. And whatever you did before, or maybe use a bit of a different technique this time because your solutions are a bit more detailed, let people just start documenting. It might be loose sheets of paper, it might be whiteboards, Post-it notes, whatever works for the team. So as before as well then, we get to the next step 4 of doing the problem solving. And just like we did in the pain point analysis part, now we're going to do a rationalization exercise for the problem solutions that we came up with. And again, it's really the same step here. Each team's going to consolidate and document their solutions. My preference is always that people would document it into a spreadsheet, and then I have a copy of it that can be given back to me, and I can manage and keep track of all the things that we're dealing with and some of the things we didn't deal with. Eliminate your duplicates again. Maybe limit to the top 5 solutions. Typically, I like to make it a smaller number of solutions than pains because quite often solutions can address multiple issues. And the other thing we want to try and do, again, we want to try and prioritize these solutions. And we've already got priorities for the pains about what people think are the most important pains. So that's a part of my prioritization of my problems. But the other thing I want to try and do is get people thinking about, is this a simple solution or a more complex one? So I get the teams to go ahead and say, well, on top of the priorities of the pains, I want you to come up with an estimate. And typically what I like to do is cost and time. So give them some basic guidelines again. From a time point of view, is this something as a solution that can be done in 3 months? Is it within 6 months? Is it beyond 9 months? That gives me an idea about big, small, smallest. and tell me how many people is going to be involved or how much resource do I need. If you do it with the current staff, or you might have to augment things into a team, or maybe you need a formal project, it gets bigger. And bigger always means you're not going to find the quick wins because you're setting a long-term plan. So typically what I find in the problem solution part, the initial problem solutions that you come up with tend to be longer term and bigger in scope. We need a new ticketing tool. We need some type of documentation management tool. We need more staff. These are all big things which aren't going to be quick wins, and it's going to be hard to sell to a management level. So in my example I have here in the slides, so we have, in this little example here, here I have my, my top ranking pane. And when I did my brainstorming, you notice here I put in here round 1. So we've come up with two suggestions here to deal with trying to address having a lack of instructions for how to handle requests. And by getting people to think about things, the suggestions here that we have each team document every request that they normally do. It tends to be a long-term initiative. The cost and effort, you have to get everyone involved, and most companies are busy, so you realize it's going to take a bit of time and effort, probably need some extra people. This allows me to add these things up and just come up with a basic prioritization or ranking factor about, are these quick wins or not? If I can get down to time estimates of 1 and cost and effort estimates of 1, then those will be the things that will actually produce my, my quick wins. So what we want to try and do, after you have this sort of first round of coming up with, here's the problems we need to deal with or the solutions we need to deal with, you want to go into a second round of problem solving. And now that people have gone through the exercise of seeing about time and cost and recognizing that they need to break it down, they're going to come up with the smaller solutions, the quicker solutions, and ultimately the quick wins. So if we go into our next slide here then, so we send everyone back to their brainstorming sessions and teams, and each team continues again. You're giving them instructions, keep on breaking that solution down until you come up with the minimal time factor and the minimal cost and resource effort. So then we'll end up getting down to, there we go, in my, my solutions list. Now we've come down here into the second round of solutions, and this may be a breakdown to the solutions that were suggested up above here in the first round. So you might just pick one request and then start to document how to deal with that one request. Maybe you pick the most common requests. Whatever it might be, when we start to see the time factor of 1 and the cost and effort factor of 1, these form the quick wins. These are things that can be done as quickly as possible with the least amount of resource and effort. So the more we do that for all of our top-ranking panes and the solutions that follow them, then we come up with a set of quick wins. Now you have something that people will be able to do right away. We can put all of these solutions into a larger project plan, and this will give us, basically you've done the job of the project manager. You've got the long-term plan. Based upon your time and cost efforts, you can kind of get a sense about there's midterm plans and short-term plans and then the quick wins. So this gives you ultimately your roadmap as well as your initial activities to get you started. So the final piece of the problem-solving element to brainstorm or sorry, pain point analysis. So each team then, just like before, once you get everything broken down, have each team present what they're doing. Let everyone else know what's come up as a solution, because you're going to combine anything that's duplicate. You're going to recognize that one solution can cover more than one pane. And then you come up with a consolidated pane list and your ultimate project plan. Right? So you got your quick wins, those things that we found as the minimal time, minimal cost and effort. Short-term actions might be just one measurement factor higher. You have your midterm actions and your long-term term plan. So all of these things get put into the overall project plan. Now you have something which you can show immediate results for, and you can say this is a step on the way to the bigger picture. And that's it. Those are the basic steps we want to run through when we're doing a pain point analysis. And so just to, so we've actually, we're good. We stayed within our time limit today. We didn't go over too much from the half-hour points. So just going through a summary then. So in step number 1, and I'm going to draw a line here again, that there's really, in my way of doing things, 2 separate dates and times that you want to sort of do a pain point analysis for. So step 1, brainstorm your pain points. And then in step 2 of this first phase, rationalize those pain points and consolidate the pain points and make sure all the teams are involved in knowing different pains across the different stakeholder teams. Then you get into phase 2, come back and start brainstorming again, this time for solutions to these pain points up here. Again, rationalize. Actually, I need to change my slide here. I should say rationalize the solutions here, and then keep breaking it down however many rounds you have to go through until you can come up with quick wins. And then consolidate those, again, I should say solutions here, and produce your consolidated project plan. Okay, so we've reached the end of the presentation then. So a fairly simple informal technique for doing improvement. I find great success rates by using this because, again, you're involving people who need to be the ones actioning these improvements down the road. And people are better able to buy into something that they come up with rather than having a decision forced down upon them. I do have one other slide just to mention within our the blogs of ThoughtRock. I think way back in June, and here's the dates here, June and May, I put 2 articles into the blogs, and you'll be able to go back and get them. Basically going through the same thing about path to better improvement, right? That's our pain point analysis. And then our problem solving and drilling down to quick wins, that was the part 2 of the articles that I put in there. So if you want a bit more reading on top of the presentation, you can go to those blogs. And what I'll do now is pass it over to Christy and see if we have any questions that anyone may have passed on. So Christy.
Yes, hey Graham, thank you so much, Graham. I don't see any questions in the panel. However, if you guys have any questions, feel free to contact us or our guest directly. And hopefully we'll see you next week. Thanks again, Graham, for joining us, and thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Yep, and thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time on the next presentation.